So, okay, number one, in a crisis such as this, are there critical timelines to be considered? If so, what are they?
Yes, there are critical timelines to be considered. I think that a good example to look at would be something like a terrorist attack, because it's something that we cannot predict will happen. So the fact that it's an alien attack, we can look at something like 9/11. And so the critical timeline during 9/11 you can think of was that at ground zero you had to do emergency services to save lives of those who still had an opportunity to be alive. So that's why like the firefighters and police officers were down at ground zero to dig through the rubble and to find those other people. And something like this, with those places that were directly affected, with like explosions, or because the aliens took out both highways in and out of Flagstaff, and so you have to think about those areas, get those people out, evacuated. You also have to think of assigning like a triage zone, whether that be schools, so that you can have areas where people will sign in, people can see if their injured relatives, family members, friends are in those areas. Another critical timeline is that it is no longer monsoon season, so things like natural resources like water, they're going to be scarce, because there's no way in and out of Flagstaff. And so you have to think about that. Winter is coming, so water is our number one concern, and food resources as well. And then just like I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well, especially the first two with basically your safety needs and your physiological needs like food, water, warmth, shelter, stuff like that.
Nice. Those are all really good key points.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so considering this disaster, who are the local and national people and organizations that need to be contacted? In what order should they be contacted?
Okay, well, what I think of is sort of building like a war cabinet, because we don't know what the aliens want. We have no way of communicating with them. This is a completely unique situation, so we don't know what really, we don't want to engage them because we don't know their capabilities, if they're here for peace, if they're here for war. And so building a safety cabinet is the first step, and you have to think of the American Red Cross, which we have here in Flagstaff. We have a center, American Red Cross Center here in Flag. We have Flagstaff Medical Center. You have to get them involved. We have the fire department, the police department, and NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, to help provide training, crisis intervention training, to those police officers who may not have it. And then on a state level, you have to think of like the Arizona National Guard, just over there in Williams. Is Camp Navajo, so you have a resource right there. And then nationally, you know, this is something that the FBI would clearly be involved in. The Department of Defense, military involvement. And so first you start off with the micro here in Flagstaff, the community involvement, and then you branch out to the state and then nationally.
Okay. Yeah. So, I ask you, what helpful or positive role can the media play in helping resolve this crisis?
Well, the media is the main resource of information when it comes to something like this. If it's used correctly, it can help unite people. The media can also help different agencies collaborate together. So like the police department and say Flagstaff Medical Center. If there's a gap in communications between the two, but the media knows something over here, but these guys didn't know about that. That can help in that sense.
Be the bridge.
Exactly. And it can keep people up to date on events, and especially right now. And it provides resources for public through TV, internet, radio, whatever the media way that you want to go about it.
Okay, so with that being said, what unhelpful or negative role can the media play in contributing to this crisis?
Okay, well, you can think of it just on the flip side. So basically, the media can divide the people as well. Wrong information, misinformation, especially through like something like social media. People are going by that social media, and if they're not really checking their resources of that information, then that can hurt. It can also provide false information. The media can do that as well. And they can be a barrier between agencies as well. The example that I gave before at the police department and hospital, bridging that gap, like I said, if they don't agree and they're butting heads through the media, and if the media is the aggressor for that, then that doesn't help the situation.
Yeah. Okay, so within your team, who are the critical players on your emergency management team, and why are they important?
Okay, so it would have to be Chief of Police, which is Kevin Treadway here in Flagstaff, Deputy Chief Dan Musselman, and Walter Miller. They're integral because it's a police force. They are basically the ones who are going to try and keep the peace here as long as possible. Try to make it so that the riots don't escalate further than what they've already been through. And so keeping order is number one. Also, Fire Chief Mark Gilliard, you don't want inside of Flagstaff right now any fire at all, because it's contained. Flagstaff is a contained area right now. If you get a fire inside of Flagstaff, that could wipe out the entire city. Then of course, Northern Arizona Healthcare Board of Directors and Administration, to set up triage zones and stuff. You need that communication. You need the resources and the supplies and the trained professionals to help people who are injured, both psychologically and physically. Let's see, the Flagstaff City Council and Vice Mayor Jamie Whelan. In this scenario, the Mayor Coral Evans has been taken by the aliens.
Yes.
And so the Vice Mayor Jamie Whelan is now in charge. And she can also get help from somebody who has been in that position for the past 4 years, which is Jerry Neighbors. And so seeking his advice and counsel as well could be beneficial. And plus the council members in the city of Flagstaff, who knows the city better than all of these resources. And I think the collaboration between all these resources is pivotal in maintaining order. And it also minimizes the risk of anarchy.
Okay, definitely. Definitely. So what is your assessment of the state of crisis preparedness in the USA today?
Well, let me say that in the United States, we're blessed to be able to live in a country where if something goes wrong, others inside of our country will help each other out. Think of Hurricane Harvey, J.J. Watt. He raised $37 million. Other countries, they don't have those resources. If something happens, then it affects the whole country. And they require help from places like us. I like to think of, actually this one time, a personal experience. When I was in the Navy, 2007, Bangladesh had Cyclone Sitter, and we were called to provide relief efforts for Bangladesh. And I was part of the crew that went and delivered those emergency supplies, food, water, to the people of Bangladesh. And so we're lucky to be able to have that fortune to not only help ourselves in these times, but others. Sorry, the cat. All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are we better at managing certain types of large-scale disasters than others? If so, what are they and why?
Okay, well, I think that yes, we are better at managing certain disasters. Things such as things that are somewhat predictable, like a tornado, a hurricane, a volcanic eruption, a snowstorm. That can be predicted, and so it gives people time to evacuate. It gives people time to prepare. But something like a terrorist attack or an alien invasion, it's unpredictable, and that's what makes this situation very unique. Is that it has never happened before in the history. So we are the first people to deal with something like this. And so it's all new, and we have to think of those times like terrorist attacks, like earthquakes that are unpredictable.
Same procedures.
Exactly. And try to help in that way.
Okay. All right, so what kind of training, education, and experience do you believe should be required to be an effective crisis manager?
Well, I believe that a crisis manager needs to oversee the functions and collaborations of all the organizations providing services during the crisis. They should have work experience with multiple services involved with the crisis. So that would be the police force, that would be mental health services, medical services. Having experience in those makes an effective crisis manager. Also, you should have a experience with multiple cultures too. Here in Flagstaff, we have a high population of Latinos, we have a high population of Native Americans, Caucasians. So being able to speak to those different cultures and unite in a time of tragedy is something that is pivotal for a crisis manager to be able to get through.
Okay.
And I think that educationally they should have like a minimum of a master's degree, if not a doctorate. That those critical thinking skills need to be at a high level.
Yes.
And they should have training in a multitude of different facets. So I think of like my time in the military. We were training all the time for situations that may have never happened, but at least we were trained for these situations just in case. And we need to be prepared for a multitude of crises at a single time. So even if, yes, we have aliens right now, but we need to be thinking about stuff like, what if the military gets involved?
Yes.
What if we decide to go to war with them? We're right at the epicenter of the war zone, basically. So we need to be prepared for all situations.
War on American soil.
Yes, sir.
That's a nightmare. So, given the disaster, how will you go about coordinating a response? And what is your plan?
Okay, well, basically, coordinating a response, you need to be in touch with all those major players. And basically the plan is, the first, step one is to provide emergency response to those directly affected. Like I was talking about earlier, The direct zones where the aliens attacked, where they knocked out the streets, we need to send emergency services over there. And the second step would be we need to call the fire department to put out any fires. Because if we get a fire within the town, we're done. We need to set up triage centers, thirdly, with trained medical professionals and mental health professionals for those who, this is a very dangerous time and people need to be prepared. Also, we could call on other resources such as military members in town, veterans who have been trained to deal with situations like this, to head up those triage centers as well.
Okay.
What else do I have? We need to utilize the police force to maintain order, halt riots, and there's looting going on, so we need to halt that as well. Try to do it peacefully as possible, because we need all the people in town right now to be safe.
Definitely.
We also need to be peaceful towards the aliens as long as possible. I think their technology, if they're here right now, is far advanced from ours. So that being said, their weaponry, if they have it, if they're planning to utilize it, is probably a lot more advanced than ours as well. And so going to war without trying to make contact with them or find out why they're here is very important. We need to know right now why they're here, basically. And going to war with them right now is not in our best interest. We need to have our police force train local civilians who want to help maintain order. So anybody who is able and willing to help, we have to have our police force train them, along with NAMI, so that it's crisis intervention team methods. We need to have daily collaborations between our town leaders, state leaders, and national leaders. They need to collaborate and make sure that everything is going to plan and that there are no gaps in communication. Because once you get that gap in communication, dangerous things happen.
Very dangerous things happen.
And we need to try to communicate with the aliens, lastly. We're going to have to utilize our friends at the university. We're going to have to utilize our friends at the community college. Anybody who knows basically that use of another language or linguistics in general, they have to be utilized in this case. I'm sure that nationally they'll have the top tier people trying to communicate as well. So communication between all of us is vital to our safety in this situation.
Okay. And so I'm curious, in a situation like this, what resources do you need?
Okay. Well, the resources that I automatically think of is the resources that we have here in town.
Okay, yes.
So the American Red Cross, the hospital, mental health services, the colleges. They can be great for this. I mean, you need your best minds right now to come together. But other resources that we need are, the most paramount is food and water. Making sure that we're prepared for a long time, because this may take months, it may take years, we don't know how long it's going to take. So obtaining those goods are integral right now and vital. We need a way to communicate with others outside the Flagstaff community if we don't already have it. So we'll have to have electric companies, we'll have to have any kind of communications resources that we have in town to kind of work on the clock to make sure that communications with the outside of Flagstaff is good. And And we also need physical and mental health resources. This is a crisis, and this is going to come with a lot of emotional baggage for people, even who weren't, I guess, directly affected. So we're going to have those mental health services and physical health services on standby for this situation. And lastly, as a last-ditch effort, we're going to need weapons and ammunition. In case the aliens do decide to be hostile, we need to be prepared to go to war with all that we have. And so, and we need to have those willing civilians, once again, who are willing to come forth and help us defend ourselves.
So, what I feel like is the most important is you already hit on this, you already hit on this topic of mental illness and stresses. So, what steps do you take? What steps do you do to take care of your stress, your own stress, and the trauma and the stress that is caused to your staff?
Okay. Personally, I do yoga every night.
Okay.
It helps keep my mind at ease, and it helps me focus. You know, they say that the constant in yoga is your breath, and so it brings it back to that. If I can just focus on that
To be aware of your own breath.
Yes. Something simplified just like that, and kind of ignore the outside for just a little bit, that can be beneficial. Also, you need to be able to lean on your family and friends in a time like this. You know, like, this is a very unique situation. Nobody's ever faced this before, and we need to be able to lean on each other and support one another. As for my staff, including all of my emergency responders, mental health counselors, all the judges and lawyers, you know, everybody, I think, needs to take shifts, whether it be those higher advanced educational backgrounds, or even if you're a worker at McDonald's, you can still provide some sort of resource during this time, whether it be handing out water or comforting those in their last moments.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important thing, just so somebody has a hand to hold on to. Then, of course, take some time to yourself when possible. I think it's important to not overload yourself. If I told my workers, you know, it's important to go ahead and separate yourself from the world for just a little bit even. That's perfectly fine. And take your mind, anything to take your mind off the current situation. It's a very stressful time, and you need to be willing to do that.
All right. So
Thank you, sir.
The interview. Yep.
Yes, I appreciate it.
Definitely.
Take care.
All right.